Okay, so here's how to edit particles. First, let's look inside this folder, and you don't always have 3 layers inside a particle folder. There could be just one, or there could be many. It just kind of depends on what you're trying to accomplish. But I wanted you to see that, for example, if you click here on layer 1, way down here, there's this tiny little object. All right. If I zoomed in on it, you really got to zoom in a lot because it's super small. It's just a white circle. All right. I think the other two are a little bit different. They're located somewhere else. So this one's up here. That one's another white circle. And then that one's kind of like a teardrop shape. All right. So in this case, the way that I made this snow, there are 3 objects. Okay, I closed up the folder now, and let's look at how to edit the particles. First of all, zoom out on the stage and move it over to the right. And the reason I'm doing this is because we need to make room for the drop-down menu. So in Tools, click on this icon for particle layer. This gives you access to the drop-down. So this drop-down isn't movable, and that's why I zoomed out on the stage and moved it over. The best way to handle this is to experiment. Okay, it takes quite a bit of practice to get used to how to work with all of these settings to get particles to do what you want. And I can't really explain each thing definitively because they all interact. Okay, so if you change one thing and then another, they may affect each other. So I can give you a few pointers, but first of all, I'm going to close up the menu for just a second, and you do that by clicking back up here. Okay, and then push the play button and have it running while you experiment. So this will just keep looping for the entire 500 frames. It'll just keep playing them out over and over. And that's going to be very helpful because when you click here to make this menu show up, and as you make changes in here, you'll get to see what's happening over here. So, for example, right now, the source height of this is 0. It's a flat line, and it happens to be in the middle. So if I clicked in here and then I'll push my mouse wheel around, then you can see that the source height is now becoming like an oval. All right, and the number changed over here. Okay, so you can't tell so much with all the other settings how source height might be affecting things, but if you change something else along with that, then you may really start to notice what effect it's having. And then source depth, okay, that changes. It's a little bit harder to see, but the higher the source depth, then some of the little layers, as they come down across, seem like they're closer to you and some further away. So the dots, some of the dots are really large, some of the dots are really small. Okay. Velocity. So if I turn that down to a low number, well, for one thing, you can see that the snow's barely moving anymore, and it's also shifted. Okay, and I'll show you how to fix that. If you had something really slow, but it shifted out of place. Okay, let me go up to close this, and then I need to stop the animation from running, and I have to go back to frame 0 for what I'm going to do next. And that is to go over here underneath layer, click on transform layer, and then push the layer up. Okay, and you know, now it looks completely convoluted again. So if I push the play button and then open up the particles, then I'm probably going to have to change something like, well, let's see, the depth, the height. Okay, you see how everything I'm changing is now affecting the way the particles is showing up in my stage area. So that's what I meant by I can't just tell you definitively, this will do this will do that, because you've just got to play. And it can seem really hard at first, so don't feel bad if you try to make some change that's not working out at all. You know, I've messed around with the particles quite a bit, and I'm getting a little better at it myself, but you know, I often have to go through a lot of trial and error. I will point out before I stop talking, up here under particle count and preview particles, this is a really high number, and that's because I wanted it to look like a lot of snow out of just the 3 layers in there. But if you change particle count down to, say, 500, then you need to change the preview down to 500 or less. Okay, the only thing that preview's doing is giving you a preview of what the rendered animation will look like. So you don't want the number to be any higher than the actual particle count, right? You can have the preview be a lower number. People often put this at a lower number here if maybe Moho is acting like it wants to crash, you know, if their computer isn't very good and maybe they've got a lot of other stuff in the animation and they're having trouble, you know, rendering or running the software, then they'll set the preview down. But otherwise, don't have this number higher than that number. Okay? So there's lots of stuff I won't even begin to try to explain further. Now, this checkbox over here is to animate whether your particles are running or not. So if you want to just hide the particles because you know, you don't want them in the way while you're working on your animation, you should hide them by using, you know, clicking on the eyeballs over in the layers palette. But if you need to animate whether the particles are running, then you can use this checkbox wherever you need to along the timeline. All right, I'm going to stop there. This is already a lot longer of a tutorial than what I had planned on, so good luck and let me know if you have any other questions.